when somebody is talking in a way that violates their rules about what's okay.
You've probably noticed that Caroline's looks like a woman's shape.
You learn to live and deal with it, you know, especially when you have a wife and 2 kids.
Once I decided that she was not going to get better, that this wasn't something she was going to get over. I don't know that I like it any better, but at least you kind of learn to accept it and accept her for the way she is.
What kept James going a lot of the times is the fact that we believed in him, and we just kept telling him that, James, if you really try, you could really get over this.
When you have someone who develops schizophrenia in your own family, even if you're a professional, it's like you don't really know what to do.
Sometimes it may be difficult to get beyond the behaviors that don't seem so normal.
Well, you have a good woman that sticks by you, you know, you'll do anything.
You know, when he's under stress, I just don't bother him. I just let him be. Because we all go through stress. I don't have a mental problem, and I'm stressed. You know, I'm stressed.
I tell Kristen quite often that she's one of the bravest and strongest people I know, and she helps me become strong.
I'll call Kristen, and she'll be laughing and telling stories and have a full life, and now is dating someone and talking about her job, and has this really incredible attitude and spirit that comes shining through.
People with schizophrenia, many people become uninterested in other people, and she's never done that, you know. She's always had this desire for friends, and so that kind of remnant of her personality sort of stayed.
Okay, well, it's so beautiful here.
Today, Anique's 1,000 hours at the Greater Los Angeles Zoo is like a master's degree.
Chimpanzees like to play.
It's been especially exciting to us to see her rejoin the world.
I'm involved with the world, and I realize that. So I just keep busy with art projects and wanted to draw animals, sort of nature scenes that animals are in amongst nature. So I drew a series of birds. 2 birds, 2 birds, 2 birds, and 2 birds. With the background being bamboo.
She has a life that she loves, you know, that she enjoys.
You know, we feel Anique is allowing herself new challenges every day.
People often make the mistake of rushing back immediately into doing full scale what they were doing before. What's been nice for James is that he could come in quietly and slowly and play in the church. He's been able to find a real use for his talents and his abilities, but in an environment that feels comfortable to him.
When I started playing in church, well, my pop told me I had the option to play in church, serve God, or serve the devil in a club, so so I had to make a choice.
You haven't heard James at his best, really. Even on his medication, he gets the little touch, and he runs his fingers across the keyboard, and he puts in all the extras, you know, that he puts in.
He works hard with his music. He is taking charge of our choirs. He has a second job of helping to maintain our church. He's second to none when it comes to that.
I want to make Kristen well. I want her to not have schizophrenia, but I can't do that. So what I'm doing right now is advocating for things that I can make a difference in, such as housing, and such as better research and medications.
These are people, you know, their behaviors are a little different, their perspectives are a little different, but they're very human.
Most people wonder, how did you go from being locked up and committed as an insane person and stuck in the back wards of the state hospital in a seclusion room and stripped in less than a seclusion room for 3 days where you urinated and defecated and regurgitated all in yourself and living in them? I mean, that was real tough, and then you're an insane person with this degenerative brain disease. How did you go from there, 12 years later, being the director of psychology in the same state hospital system where they locked you up? Most people get curious as to how I did that.
If you look at enough people with schizophrenia, I think you will find people who have deficits in slightly different areas. But what's not happening is the normal integration, the normal thing that's so miraculous that we do all the time, where all the different pieces are able to just work together.
What causes it is not really well understood, and how to treat it we're just beginning to develop a solid sense of.
I think there are really two main areas in the basic science of schizophrenia, is genetics. The other major area is the studies using neuroimaging, and those give us a chance to see the brain directly. We can see its anatomy, and we can see its function and physiology.
At the moment, there is a time artifact in that it allocates matrix and vector.
The imaging lab here is really part of the Mental Health Clinical Research Center. We develop software and also manage and process images that are collected as part of the schizophrenia research effort here at Iowa. We're trying to take the measurements on people's brains and characterize the illness in a more definite way. Before we can have any idea of how to treat the disease, we have to have an idea of what part of the brain is wrong. Go back to coronal. One of the people that works in the lab, and actually is a very important part of it, is Greg Harris, and he himself has the disease schizophrenia.
Sagittal. Sagittal is wrong, right?
Well, I think so.
I've developed a brain image measurement program and a tissue classification program in cooperation with the director of the lab, who is sort of a supervisor and partner and critic.
Good.
And keeps me on track. I've got a perfectly mainstream competitive job. I didn't think that was broken.
Well, yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes. We heard of this person who was in town who had terrific credentials, was a very gifted programmer, and had spent the last several years sort of watching cartoons on television. And we invited him to come on to this group.
I'm not just a programmer there. I've been sort of thinking about how to measure the brain in general and what can we do about that.
We would look at how big this part of the brain was in schizophrenics and in controls and try to decide if it was different sized.
And we found that males were different from females and male schizophrenics were different from male controls.
We've moved from size to thinking about shape, and is the shape of this part of the brain wrong? Shape might give you a clue toward whether it's been a developmental problem or whether it's a genetic problem and things like that.
It's a complicated organ. I think you're getting a sense that the brain is complex, and that up until fairly recently we hadn't even been at a level where we were able to ask sophisticated questions.
As schizophrenics think about things, how do their brains work that may be different than when normal controls think about things? And that's really where the good stuff is.
From the gene, it can also come from what happens before you're born.
The human brain continues to mature well into the 20s, but the final maturation process, which involves pruning of cells and, the final little hookups at the end, those occur in adolescence and young adult life, and those go wrong.
One of the great tragedies of the last 30 years was the notion that meds alone would be the answer.
I don't think that the medications that we have right now are going to cure the illness, but they are certainly better, more effective treatments than the earlier medications.
The old drugs were harrowing, I think. They put me on Navain because I was angry and preoccupied, and they had this little slogan: Navain turns a dragon into a butterfly, and it didn't. It would smooth you over in a way. But you still had the beliefs and the feelings and so on. They just didn't have the energy. They were sort of gentle anger and gentle bitterness and gentle irony. And
seeing the effect of medications is a fairly major issue. Watching the roller coaster of trying various medications for this illness is really hard because it really changes a lot.
My first chance at a modern drug was Risperdal, and Risperdal acts on two systems at once, the dopamine system and the serotonin system, and it took care of the serotonin system in a way that was completely new to me, and my anger went away and my despair went away, and my whole outlook brightened.
Medications have been coming along that patients just do better, and they do better consistently than they did before, and we can't believe it. It's like our jaws have dropped. we're going to see most people with schizophrenia do much better in the next 5 years. And then we're going to have to say, well, how do we handle the expectations? How do we handle the disappointments that then come on with doing better and having improved functioning? Well, there are going to be disappointments. There are going to be dissatisfaction. We as a profession are going to have to learn much more about rehabilitation, much more about how to help people cope with disappointments, and help people through so that they can arrive at the end of that process safely.
The water looks pretty good.
Yeah, nice and flat.
So how's your job been going? You guys been making some money?
Never enough.
Yeah. I was 24 years old and I was working in a meat packing plant, and things were just pretty normal. I mean, I'm a membership to a swimming tennis club and some friends I used to hang out with and stuff. And then it's just one night I was sitting with my girlfriend, and all of a sudden I heard this voice like say, "You're gonna get it now," or something like that. And then I was like, "Whoa, what was that?" You know?
I gotta pull the stern back to here to give me room to turn around.
Okay. Then I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and then the voice was like, "Yeah, I'm back," you know, and I got some friends with me, and I could actually kind of like talk to him myself, you know. He was like, "I want you guys to shut up," you know, and he'd be like, "Oh, we're never gonna leave you." And plus I was feeling like really paranoid, like people were out to get me. I think part was just fear, just like I had no idea what was going on. I was trying to figure it out. So after about 2 more days, it went from those 3 voices to 5 voices. It was like the voice of God, Satan, and some guy named John Klodvinsky, my guardian angel Chris, and some other angel that never really identified herself. It was like the imagination part of my brain had just completely taken over the whole thing and was just running the whole show. Within 5 days, I was in the mental hospital, you know, and was diagnosed with schizophrenia right off the bat. Like your worst nightmare coming true. Yeah, I went from being perfectly normal, having a great time, to my brain just had like a big malfunction, to say the least.
I met Jim 10 years ago here in Seattle. I was going to college, and we became roommates.
Because Jim was close in age to my son's age, I kind of mothered Jim a little bit. You know, he just kind of mentioned in passing that he heard voices from time to time.
I noticed he didn't have a lot of energy. He kind of kept to himself a lot.
He'd sit for hours and watch TV, didn't much care about what his surroundings looked like. He didn't clean up after himself real well or take care of things around the house.
For the first 2 years or so, these people didn't know. I mean, especially like my friend John, he had no idea. I was really afraid that people would think, well, God, he has schizophrenia, and I was like, oh, we don't want to be friends with him.
He never had his life together. He never had material possessions.
There's such a stigma attached to it that I thought, well, I'm just going to keep it, you know, I'm not going to tell anybody, and I'm just going to rough it.
He wasn't focused or stable enough to create a decent life for himself. I came back one day and his truck was destroyed, and he was gone, and I talked to my other friends that were still living in the house, and they said, well, he had run his truck into a bridge abutment and tried to commit suicide, and that he was in Harborview.
Then after that came the point in time where the voices told Jim to jump off the roof.
I got up that morning and I went into the living room to watch some TV.
Hi, folks, and welcome to our show. Believe it,
and we're devoting the entire hour to it. It's a suicide. Jim Fitzgerald died on the roof of his house.
Folks, live right here. So he's back.
The people on the talk show were talking about me.
Dead man. And this is All-American Boys.
And we're all just nuts about it, folks, so stay with us.
Finally, after about another 15 minutes of this, I finally said, well, crap, this must really be true.
It is, Jim. Your death is a redemption for your sins.
There is no redemption, only punishment and torture you deserve.
Satan's right, dude. I don't take sides, but we were CIA. How many people you betrayed? Come on, Jimmy boy, get your ass up on that roof. We are one. We are three. Father, Son,
Holy bullshit!
You really don't
You do know.
you know?
You do know.
I was thinking to myself, boy, this is not a good idea.
The real point is
So I got up on the top of the roof and I'm looking around and I'm thinking,